And we're outside, and today I'm going to talk about the White Zinc V2 update because I owe you a new update on this. I was almost waiting for another week to do it because then we'd have some more samples I could show. But you know what? It's really good to just communicate right now and not wait for the best next moment with samples, etc. So here I am to tell you some good news about the V2. So over the last few weeks between the last update and now, we've actually gone and continued with making new samples as fast as we could, and we went two routes at that time. We were saying we're going to do a coating over the case first and then paint, and the other one was to do the paint and then the UV coating over the case. Now originally we thought the UV coated one has the best chance of succeeding because then the outside would be a slightly harder shell, which is then the UV coating. And when we had the original samples and compared that with the e-coating with paint, the e-coating with paint was easy to chip off the paint, and we're like, bruh, what's the point? But oh my gosh, what were we wrong? Thankfully, that development continued thanks to our partner manufacturer. I wouldn't say insisting, but being confident that they can do better, and they made a new sample where they've changed the mixture between the e-coating and the paint so there's a better adherence together. That was also the whole point of doing the e-coating first and then the paint over it, so the paint would better adhesive to the surface versus the bare metal surface of the zinc case. When we reviewed the samples between the e-coating paint, are you still following?
Hey, wake up.
And the paint plus UV coat, we found out that they were very close when it came to the durability and performance, which was surprising. So we were checking about two things. The first thing was, how easy is it to chip off the paint? And the way we check that is we grab the case, we grab the backside of a screwdriver basically, and we're hamming on it, like from all the sides, hamming, and just hitting it, literally hitting it hard. And it made a whole bunch of noise. But you know what? The paint didn't drop off on the V-coated one as expected, but it also did not drop off on the e-coating plus paint over it. It just sticked on there. Obviously, if we take some kind of blunt metal object and start hammering it on them, then we're literally just making dents and breaking it. But in this case, the paint just didn't drop, so that was nice.
Nice.
Then we tested for the second part, which was, can we leave gray marks on the surface when we're grazing over with a metal object? So first with the UV-coated one, we grazed over with a metal object and nothing happened. Now we did the same thing on the e-coating plus paint. We grazed over it. You know what? Nothing happened. But once you start pushing it slightly harder, of course, you're gonna get into the scratch territory, right? So you do that with the UV-coated one. Nothing happens, as in there's no gray mark, but when you put it in the light and you reflect it, you can see the reflection of the scratches you've made in the UV coating itself. And when you did this on the e-coat painted one, you do start to get some of the gray marks. However, those gray marks were very easy to wipe off afterwards with your thumb or with a cloth. And you didn't need to get some kind of eraser or something special to remove it. And after it was removed, you could not see any kind of trace of this gray mark, which was great because that meant that they were also on a quite equal footing. Even so, a little bit better than the UV coat because you can completely remove the mark, whereas with the UV coat, you're gonna get that permanent-like reflection of a scratch. Then the question was, okay, well, which one of the two do we prefer? And here comes the big difference. That UV coating, coloring-wise, was a lot better. It got a lot closer to the original case color, but it was still not exactly the same. And in addition, you would have that feeling of the UV coat on the outside. It's not terrible, but it's just not what we envisioned originally when making the product. However, the e-coating plus paint one, that one matched the original color way much more close and had still a very similar to same feeling on the outside, which was great. So we went for the e-coat plus paint. So the question then becomes, what now? And well, this went to the factory as the golden sample that we approve of this. They're now replicating that sample. I did receive this question from a customer about, hey, how different is the color going to be? Because if the color is too different from the original, I would rather go for the original than going for this V2 because of color. And that was interesting. I didn't even think about that being one of the major decision points. So I can happily tell you we actually did a color test you have a special machine, you can put it on top of the surface. It will then codify, let's say, the color that it detects. Then you can do that on another surface, and it's going to codify that as well. And then it makes a comparison to the two and tells you in delta what the difference is between the two colors. In a production, when you usually have a golden sample, this is like the reference sample where every unit of the production needs to compare with in dimensions, in color, etc. What you do is you take the golden sample, you measure the color, then you take one of the production units, you measure the color, and then the delta difference is not allowed to be any higher than 1. So comparing the V1 version with the V2 version doing the same test, that delta difference was 0.7. That means that is acceptable even for production batches, and that for as far as you know and as far as you understand and as far as you will experience that color, it's the same as the V1 case. Now, as you remember in the original email and in the previous update, we've mentioned that it might take 2 to 3 months before you can get your V2 case. You need to be ready to wait for that amount of time. I'm also happy to note that we are running a little bit faster than that. Now that we have that approved case, we can get into production and get this running. I don't have conclusive hard dates for you just yet. In a future update, I'll get more detailed, or you'll receive more details on the exact date, or that's going to be reflected on the hub.wooting.io. But in either case, we'll make sure that you stay informed about your V2 white zinc case. That's it for today, and in the next update, we'll see what happens. Bye-bye.